is Jennifer Engel. I am the author of Heaven Under Construction, as well as Highest Possibility States. And what I've been doing is I've been taking some of the poems from this book, Heaven Under Construction, and I've been reading them out loud, and I've been creating reflective poetry back and forth. I kind of talked about at the beginning how reflective poetry really helped me get through cancer, because I published this book back in 2000. Well, I wrote it back in 2014. I published it in 2017 with Balboa Press, and then I kind of let it sit around for a while. Then I got my cancer recurred last fall, but it was just little on my spine. They did 3 radiation treatments and it was over. And then they found it recurring within the lining of my lungs, and so I'm going through my 3rd treatment. And so I thought it would be a really good time, because it is September and we're moving into October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, to really just take some time and reflect, like, what is it like to be diagnosed with cancer the first time when you think you can be cured, versus what is it like the 3rd time, where you're kind of moving from a mindset of not necessarily being cured, but managing the cancer symptoms. And so I'm really kind of like taking this time to go back to read some of my poetry to see how it might apply to even today's time in 2021. And one of the things that they don't really tell you about cancer and cancer treatment, especially if you go through the more aggressive treatments like the chemotherapy, the radiation, the double mastectomy, which is what I went through in 2014, is the trauma that your physical, mental, and emotional bodies go through. And this can also cause PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And so this video is really going to be addressing post-traumatic stress as it relates to cancer and medical trauma. And for those of you who don't know me, I was also born with a mild case of spina bifida, which did not affect me nor my family mildly. And I also went through a lot of medical trauma when I was a child. They also don't tell you how trauma can affect you even once you get better. One thing that we're going to talk about in this video is what I like to call pilot lights. And I'll get into why I call triggers. So that's something that you may not know, but you'll be fine, you'll be fine, you'll be fine, and then all of a sudden you'll have a trigger. So, for example, we heard a story when I was originally going through cancer. There was a man who came across his chemotherapy nurse, and he literally vomited in the store aisle. He was fine. He was, in remission, but just our memories, our bodies hold such strong emotion to specific stimuli that we get triggered, and our body and our memory remembers that and brings it up to the surface. And I'm actually recording this when the full moon is about to come out, and it is my belief that the full moon, just kind of like it raises the tides of the ocean, it also raises, the water, the memory within our own bodies. So we might be experiencing some of those emotions that we have buried, that we have suppressed when the full moon kind of comes out. So what I want to do is because I was actually experiencing some of this. So I'm not necessarily schizophrenic, but when I do get triggered, I hear very, very nasty voices in my head, and I haven't really talked about that too much, because like they say in Harry Potter, hearing voices even in the wizarding world isn't a good thing, Harry. And so a lot of us kind of keep that to ourselves. Now, I say I'm not really schizophrenic because, number 1, it doesn't occur all the time. Number 2, I know that it is in my head and I don't really experience it outside my body. But I also experienced that, and I did kind of talk about that in Heaven Under Construction. And what I thought was kind of interesting is I've been in a really good place recently, and literally like just yesterday or the day before this week, I realized I have been triggered. And so what I'm going to share with you is a poem that I wrote in 2014, but also kind of goes through when I experienced my triggers, what it's like. And then how I dealt with it in 2014, and then how I'm choosing to deal with it now in 2021, which I think is a lot more positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read 2 poems from this book, and then I'm going to flip the camera. I'm going to screencastify a little PDF that I created that hopefully you can go to my website, highestpossibilitystates.com, and you can download it for free so that you can start walking through this healing process. And then also throughout the month of October, at the back of my book, Heaven Under Construction, I have a couple poems because all the roads to work were under construction when I wrote this book. And I took some of the road construction signs, if you will, and I turned them into mnemonic devices where at the time they really helped me get through the cancer treatment process. And so what I'll probably do for the whole month of October is also...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
My watch just went off. I will go through those little techniques as well. It is my passion to help people kind of clear out their subconscious, to help raise their mental health and their emotional health, and that's why I'm doing this. All right, so in this book, it's day 108, page 112. It's called The Demon Dance, and this is kind of what goes through my mind when I am having a traumatic trigger. Demon dance. Temperatures drop, wind rushes in, the demon dance is about to begin. Howling hounds released from hell are getting ready to cast their spell. Upon my mind so dark and deep, breaking down I begin to weep. A future emerges from within the trenches and brings with it dark and foul stenches. Prisoners of war arise from my past. A child before me is now cast, who seems to be a reflection of me, a child bone-weary with PTSD. And then a lot later in the book, page 345, day 339, it was interesting. I was skimming and scanning my own book because I'll be honest, you write this like 2014 and sometimes you kind of forget about what you wrote that long ago. And post-traumatic stress is something that I definitely deal with in this book. I also deal with anxiety, I deal with fear, I deal with hope, so all of that is in here. But here's another one that is called PTSD, My Sister's Cries. Something unusual happened. I've been hearing the sound of wailing, first perhaps my own, joined by many others. It comes and it goes. It's bone-chilling and haunting. Sisters diagnosed with cancers, sisters trapped in war-torn lands. I shave off my hair and cover my head. I am in mourning. I hear your cries. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. So the way that I used to handle my post-traumatic stress, and you can even see it in this book here, is I used to shave my head. This picture right here was after I was in remission from cancer, but I took my post-traumatic stress out on my hair for like years, for like 3 to 5 years, a long time. And so now you can see I am getting a lot healthier. I'm letting my hair grow back, but post-traumatic stress can really affect you, and you can still have these pilot lights and triggers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the phone around. I'm going to go to Screencastify, and I'm going to walk through this PDF that I created for you. So back in 2014, I dealt with post-traumatic stress by taking it out on myself, by not being in my highest possibility state, by really kind of staying in that negative emotion and shaving my hair and take it out on my hair. So how did I get past that? Well, part of it is why I wrote Highest Possibility States. But the other thing that I'm going to share with you, which isn't in either of these books that I just came up with today, because I did just have a trigger and I kind of walked through why I had that trigger, and I thought the way that I walked through it could help somebody else. And again, this doesn't have to be about cancer. It can be about anyone who's going through a difficult time. It doesn't even have to be about post-traumatic stress, but it is kind of geared for that. So with that, let's flip the phone around and let's see what I came up with on how to drill down into figuring out what our triggers are, learning how to get through them, and then being proactive so that hopefully they occur less and less. All right, so here we go. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to open up whatever browser that you use, and then you can type in www.highestpossibilitystates.com. And we can go to the little button up here that says free resources. You're going to click on that. And there's some stuff about highest possibility states and the appendices, but here's what you want to go down to, okay? It says click here for a free PDF of the PTSD drill down and drill up technique. So you just click it, and there you are. All right. So there's just an image of the book, but here it's called, the title is Preventing Pilot Lights, Dealing with PTSD After Cancer or Any Other Trauma. So here I just have kind of like a little introduction. What are pilot lights? What are triggers? I got the idea to call triggers the PTSD pilot lights from our home furnace system. Each time our thermostat recognized that our house temperature was not just right, either the air conditioning or the heating system kicked in. I saw my feelings as a thermostat to what was going on inside of my mind. What I didn't understand for many years is that I could use this drill down process within my mind to find out what had caused such a dysregularity within my system. So on the next page, you're going to find an example of what questions I asked myself in order to uncover the trigger, as well as how to put in coping strategies in place to prevent and manage, I just noticed some misspelling. This is what happens when I type it and publish it, but that's what you get when it's free. I do a lot more editing and checking when I publish it in a book. My editor would probably roll his eyes. But anyway, in order to prevent and manage when triggers happen, as well as why it's important to know our triggers and how to manage them. All right. So I didn't even know there was such thing called a drill down method. This is just something that I started doing naturally and recognizing myself. And when I went to look at the drill down method, I thought, okay, that's great. That's being retroactive. And you're going to notice that my drill down goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But then it's also going to build back up. It'll say, we're going to go back up to the top, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that the drill down is being retroactive, but to me the drill up is being proactive. So you'll see what I mean as we get going here. Okay, so step 1 is to ask, what am I feeling? Step 2 is to ask, what caused me to fill in the blank. Now, I found that a lot of people don't really know what their feelings are trying to tell them, and so I've done a lot of research. And in general, I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I am a special education teacher, and I'm someone who's been through a lot of trauma and things like that, and has been educated in the field of psychology and social work and things. So here's what I found, and if you have your own things that awesome. This is just a general idea to get you going, okay? So if you feel fear, it's generally not knowing what's going to happen, okay? If you feel guilt, you want to hide because of something, or you feel bad for not being able to do something. Like a lot of times when you go through cancer, well, let's even go back to fear. A lot of times you feel fear because you don't know what the end result is going to be. You don't know what treatment is going to be like. You don't know if you're going to be okay, so you're going to feel fear. A lot of times with cancer, post-traumatic stress, you're going to feel guilt because you can't do the things that you used to be able to do. And so sometimes you feel not necessarily useless per se, but you definitely don't feel yourself, and you don't always feel like you can contribute as much. Later, as you recover, you might also experience survivor's guilt. Why am I still here and other people that I know who have been diagnosed have passed on? There may be insecurity. Oh my gosh, when I went through cancer treatment and I lost my hair and I lost everything that made me a woman, you bet I felt insecure about my looks almost all the time. Anger, a boundary was broken, or you have this feeling that things are unfair. Why me, right? Withdrawal, you might feel a need to protect yourself from hurt due to being judged or not feeling supported or understood. Maybe some trust was broken. Confused, not being able to see the situation clearly in the moment or know what to do next. In fact, I did address this in my book. I was uncertain, did I actually do the right thing? Going through chemo, going through the double mastectomy, you definitely second question yourself with your different treatments and things. So these are just like in general some feelings that people might feel and why. So step one is to ask, what am I feeling and what is causing me to feel that? So for example, I'm using an example of something that came up recently. I felt withdrawn and angry. And so if you go back and you look at my little chart here, anger is a boundary that was broken, and feeling withdrawn was feeling like I needed to protect myself somehow, whether that was accurate or inaccurate. That is how I felt, and that is how I reacted. So I went to step two. I felt withdrawn and angry. I felt a boundary was broken. Specifically, I didn't like to be touched, okay? And then I drilled down. Why don't I like to be touched? That is the step three. Why don't I like? Now, instead of to be touched, it could be, why do I feel guilt? Why do I feel fear? I kind of mentioned some of those things. I feel fear because I don't know what my treatment's going to be like. I feel guilt because I can't contribute as much. I feel insecure because I don't have hair anymore. I feel angry because why me? I don't feel this should be happening to me. I feel withdrawn because I feel like the world is attacking me. I feel confused because I don't know what to do, okay? So that's what you're going to do. You're going to ask yourself, why do you feel these emotions? And some of it is going to be coming from, if I go back to these things, I feel fear because I don't feel the doctors explained everything to me before I went into treatment. I feel guilt because I used to be able to do so much and now I can't. I feel insecure because I used to have really beautiful hair or whatever it is, right? And now I don't. I used to rely on my self-worth or defined beauty by my hair or my looks. I feel angry because I feel like life is being unfair. Sometimes I think to myself, I didn't really eat that bad. I didn't smoke. I didn't do a lot of this stuff. So how come people who are eating bad and smoking and whatever, they're not getting anything happening to them, but I am, right? So it might be that. And then not being, those are just some examples. And my own specific example was like, why don't I like to be touched? Well, when I was little, most of the touch I got was from doctors and nurses, and it hurt. And so I associate touch with pain. So that might be like an example reason why. Then ask, why didn't that person know? Go down. So I was withdrawn from the person who touched me. I was angry with the person who touched me. So why didn't that person know? Well, because I never told them that I just needed my space right now. That I didn't tell them, please ask before you assume you can touch or hug me. Okay? Step 5, how can I communicate what I need? Well, we communicate what we need either verbally in person. I've also found when that's really difficult, sometimes when you're in real shutdown mode, you really can't be verbal. So I found to give yourself some space and time to go through this process to really boil down. And then when you can be a little bit more objective and you understand things, sometimes just sending a text or writing a note. Sorry, I can't speak to you right now. This is what's going on. Okay, that's actually really helpful when you can't verbally communicate. Try to keep it as simple and objective as possible when you do communicate. And a lot of it is going to be the answers that you got from your previous questions. So for example, I'm sorry I got angry and withdrew when you touched me. When I was little, most of the touch I got was from doctors and nurses, and it hurt. So I associate touch with pain. I just need a little space right now, so before you touch or hug me, please ask. Thank you. Keep it short, simple, to the point. I have a step 6 here. Why is it important to communicate what you need? I struggled with this for many years. Basically, it's so that you can prevent these pilot lights, these triggers from occurring, and you can kind of leave the trauma and the drama behind, okay? So now I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because all of this is retroactive. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent about right now is being proactive rather than retroactive to really prevent this trauma and drama from happening in the first place. So now I'm going backwards. 5. Use this process backwards to be proactive as much as possible. Communicate what you need as much as possible. 4. Share your stories so that share stories that others may need to know. You don't have to share all the intimate details, just generals. So for example, I might say, hey, just so you know, I'm not a big hugger. I'm not someone who likes to be touched much, okay? It was kind of interesting. I'm watching Survivor. I'm going through all of the episodes again, and I'm on season 5, and that's what one of the survivors did. She said, hey ladies, just so you know, I am deaf. I need to read your lips, okay? So again, you don't have to go into how or why she became deaf or why I don't like to be touched. You can be really general and simple during that time. Number 3, know your triggers. And there's probably more than one. And unfortunately, you may not know what they are until they actually happen, and that's okay. Keep a list on your phone as you discover them, and then as soon as you discover them, which is going to be in step 2, try to be as self-reflective as possible, which is step 2. As soon as you start feeling a negative emotion, it is best to start walking through this process as soon as possible. So it's really similar. I used to be like, oh, I'm tough, I don't need pain medication, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was actually the cancer treatment where the nurses told me, don't be strong, don't be whatever, take your meds and take them on time. Because really what that does is it prevents pain, okay? And we know this even from education. We know this from taking medication, that early intervention is the best intervention. So as soon as you start feeling a negative emotion, it's best to start walking through this process as soon as possible. It's similar to taking a medication before the pain gets too bad. Because if you can do it when you're slightly annoyed, it's a lot easier to control and get through the emotions rather than later if you've exploded or had a big mental meltdown, okay? And then we're back to number 1. Just as there are many triggers for negative feelings, there are many positive precautions that we can put in place to set ourselves up for stability and success. Positive routines, good music, art, faithful friends and family. So just as you're keeping track on your phone or wherever you're keeping track of what your triggers are, keep track of what your positive precautions are. And then you can have those in place as much as possible. Now, I do have a little note or a little bonus. It's called co-regulation. Co-regulation is where you have one person who is not regulated, who's experiencing some sort of negative emotion, whatever intensity that may or may not be, and they are paired up with someone who is regulated, who is in control of their emotions. So at this point, I want you to stop and I want you to think. Who in your life is usually calm and steady? Who's usually positive? Who can usually lift you up when you are down? Ask them if they would be willing to be your co-regulator when you're going through a time of distress. Now, I have found in my own experience, as you know, and I've been both. I've been the person who is not in control of their emotions, and as a special education teacher, I have been the one in control of my emotions when a student is going through distress. And I'm telling you, you can actually time it. There are chemicals in your brain that go from the logical place to the illogical place. It's called your amygdala, your animal brain. And when you are in your animal brain or your amygdala, you literally can't think rationally, okay? So you need a co-regulator to help you walk through these steps, okay? And sometimes the co-regulator just needs to listen before they give any advice or before you guys try walking through this process. And I can tell you, sometimes they just need to be quiet and listen. You can literally time it. It kind of correlates with how dysregulated you are in the moment or that person is. If they're slightly dysregulated, it might take 15 to 20 minutes, like if they're just agitated. And if they're really upset, it could take as much as an hour for that person's chemicals to go back into the rational parts of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we slow things down and we work through this process. So if you are a co-regulator, the first thing you need to do is just sit and listen and let those chemicals kind of calm down in that person's brain before you start walking through this. But literally, another thing that we're learning is that our hearts are electromagnetic, and they send out a pulse like within 6 feet of our body. So not only just by sitting, and you don't even have to do anything, this person is dysregulated and you're regulated. Your heart is calming that person down, whether you're aware of it or not. I hope that this has helped someone today, whether you're going through cancer, whether you're going through trauma, or whether you're just going through a tough time. And using this drill down process can really help us get back on track. I'll see you next week when I talk about stopping and thinking.